Good morning, everyone. My name is Emmy Bailon. I'm going to be your trainer facilitator for today, and I'm going to be talking about different ways on how to be able to integrate technology in your teaching strategies. So to give you a little bit of what am I going to talk about today, my discussion will go around blended learning as an important and effective tool in instilling remote learning or operating with remote learning in your classes. Alongside, I'm going to be explaining different pedagogy behind remote learning and blended learning as well. Alongside, I will also be including in this discussion different examples of teaching strategies that we can apply in doing remote learning in your own classes. I just want to make it clear that my context is, of course, the K-12 program. However, these strategies might also be very applicable to those people in the higher education unit so that you could also customize it in your own way to make it more appealing and at the same time very, very um, open to your classes so that your students can adapt to remote learning. Giving a little bit of context, when we talk about remote learning, it doesn't only concern the students. While it's important that we always have to consider the students as the end point of the teaching learning experience, we also have to look into the different stakeholders of learning. That includes your teachers, your administrators, even your school staff for that matter, so that you could also establish what kind of learning environment would you want your students and your other stakeholders to operate into so that the learning and the teaching experience would be smoothly done. Hence, it's important also that we get to understand what exactly remote learning is because everybody's always using or coining different terms when we talk about learning online. There are a lot of terms that has been introduced to everybody when we talk about learning online, and yet we don't really understand what is really applicable to the realities of those people who are really the receiving end of learning. I, for one, would normally use remote learning because when you talk about remote learning, it is when learners and instructors are normally separated by time and distance, but it remains that the instructor would be the source of information and the learner are normally the receiving end of that information or instruction rather, and the content that has been curated or created by that instructor, which is deployed with the use of technology. Definitely, there's a tendency for people not to be able to meet in a traditional classroom setup because, again, of separation of time and distance. They can also do it either in a synchronous learning or asynchronous learning way. Hence, another term that we can utilize when we talk about learning, remote learning, is distance learning or virtual instruction. I would like to look to for the K-12 program. I'd like to use the term remote learning because again, similar to a remote control, we normally the instructors particularly designed what exactly should be the experience of the students whenever they engage into the learning with technology being utilized as an enabler of it. Along the idea of remote learning, I'd like to define first the difference between synchronous and asynchronous learning because these are things that have been very much introduced when we talk about remote learning, and at the same time, what exactly should be the context of people when we utilize online instruction for students to be able to really maximize learning. I'd like to look at it. I divided it into categories like purpose, pace, place, time, and feedback. So when we talk about synchronous learning, on the idea of purpose, normally synchronous learning is when everybody learns together. The teacher is present as an enabler of instruction, live, done on a certain platform. While on asynchronous learning, again, the purpose is to be able to allow the students to learn on their own individually, whether it's on a group learning individually, or it can also be group, as long as the students are given the task and they're given the task independently, they're asked to do it on their own with no or even less instruction from the faculty assigned to them. That's for purpose. When we talk about pacing, synchronous learning may be done in small groups. It can also be done in pairs, or it can be done in big groups like this. When we do video conferencing, we're doing it together as a team, and we're doing it simultaneously, hence allowing the participants of that learning to be very much participative with the idea of instruction. Alongside, the synchronous learning is also, it can also be done individually or in groups. However, it's in free form. Teachers, it would be designed in a student-centered way, but with less supervision. The students are given freedom, the students are given the leeway for them to be able to accomplish a task as long as the task is provided with clear instructions, with clear purpose, so that they could be able to accomplish it in a pacing that can easily be accomplished by the learner. In synchronous learning, if I may go back, synchronous learning is done linear, meaning the student would be listening to whatever instruction that's given by the instructor or the faculty in charge, and the faculty in charge on the other hand is the one assigned at giving instruction to the participants of that specific learning task. That's for the idea of pacing. We talk about place. When we talk of synchronous learning, in synchronous learning, there are a lot of technology tools where students meet together. It could be through the learning management system. It could also be through the use of different video conferencing tool or different group chats. I'm sure this point in time, there are a lot of people have been giving you tech know-hows on how to be able to utilize these things, because these technological tools would allow you to make your students conglomerate at a certain period, at a certain place and time, so that you could be able to provide the content that either is curated or created to them for them to be able to consume knowledge. On the other hand, asynchronous learning can also be done through the use of learning management system, through the use of video interactivity tools or blended learning tools. But then these tools that are provided in asynchronous learning, the purpose of the tools would be to allow these students to be able to consume content independently, individually, or even in group, but with less supervision from the faculty instructor, and at the same time to provide also feedback that would be right away given as soon as the student or the learner would be able to finish whatever instruction or whatever activity that is assigned to them. But on the other hand, again, when we talk about time, in asynchronous learning, there is a fixed schedule. Right now, this is very synchronous because there's a fixed schedule that is dependent on the instructor's availability or a prescribed schedule. So you need to be there, you need to be present. There's a certain structure that you need to follow so that you could be able to consume the amount of learning that you're going to be provided time for that specific time. However, when you talk about asynchronous learning, the schedule is very open. And since it's done independently, it's done in a free form, students are given a longer period of time to be able to accomplish the activity that's assigned to them, hence self-paced. For the last criterion, which is feedback, in synchronous learning, when we talk of synchronous learning, immediate feedback is given. So example, in this activity later, I'm going to be giving you activities that would allow me to check if you indeed understand whatever learning that's going to be provided to you today. And right away, the instructor would be able to elicit feedback from the students, from whoever's going to be consuming knowledge. And right after the lesson, there is amount of data that's going to be taken out from all these learning that's going to be consumed by both the teacher and the student. However, in asynchronous learning, delayed feedback is given since um, the amount of learning can be done in a self-paced manner. Hence, it takes time for teachers to be able to elicit the feedback from the students that are consuming the knowledge, that the content rather that's been given or designed for them. Again, this is the difference between synchronous and asynchronous learning. And I hope that that using this criteria that I presented to you, you would be able to really think of ways on how to be able to really design your lesson. When you want to meet your students together, you want your students to learn on their own. Again, to provide more avenues for students to be able to really find some structure when they do learning in a remote setup. I'd like you to answer, I'd like to ask everybody to go to menti.com here. Um, I would be providing people an access. Wait, I'd like to I'd like to give access to people to look into menti.com here. Kindly share. I'd like to look into menti.com there. And I'd like you to answer using the code 163445. I'd like to know where we are coming from just to be able to contextualize what is SAMR. And I'd like to know what exactly, where we are in integrating technology in aid of learning. So I'm giving everybody like 5 to 10 minutes to answer using the code 163445. Go to menti.com and use the code 163445 to be able to give me a feedback of how it is to, just for me to know where you are in understanding, or if you've heard the term SAMR and how where you are in terms of integrating technology. Or if not, I would encourage everybody to also go to your chat, right? There's a chat room for Zoom. You can also utilize the chat area for your Zoom so that you could understand. You could be able to put your answers to this. 2 minutes. Right. Thank you for the feedback. I'm already getting 2 feedback there. Thank you. Right. Thank you so much. Okay, now I'm getting right. So given given this idea, I'm getting a sense that I feel there's a feedback that there's a lot of people saying that I feel this is a new thing to learn. I feel I know it, but they lack the skill. So I feel that there's need to learn more. Yes, now there's a change in feedback. This is what I'm saying. In synchronous learning, right away, you could be able to get, you could be able to elicit feedback right away from the people participating in your learning. So Mentimeter. This is an app called Mentimeter. You can utilize Mentimeter. Right. Thank you for those people who sent their feedback using the live chat. Thank you. B. Right. There are people saying that they're in B. Thank you. Right. Oh, thank you for those people who are telling that they know already. Yes, they know something about SAMR. Thank you for citing the idea of the letters, the meaning of the term SAMR. I'll dig deeper into that in a bit. Right? A lot of people are saying that they're already. A lot of people are saying they're in letter B. They feel they need to learn more. Right? They need to learn more. Um, there's an equal number saying that they, right now on my screen, it's just taking time for it to load into the YouTube live. But in my screen, there is now um, a lot of people stating that the feeling right now of people is in letter B, but there are a lot of people also stating that they're already in letter D, which is, I feel that this is a new thing to learn. But there's also significant numbers stating that they feel they know it, but they lack the skill on how to be able to do it. Right. Thank you so much for those people who answered. I really appreciate those people appreciate. And let's try to get into deeper dig into what SAMR is and how exactly would this be relevant in integrating technology for remote learning. Again, what's important here is that we always have to make people feel, whenever I do remote learning, guys, you always have to make people feel that we're all rocking the same boat. Even your students would always feel that they're also quite anxious because they don't see their teachers, or even their classmates. They feel sad that they don't get to interact with their classmates that much because again they're separated by time and distance, or even space for that matter. It's important also to always make them feel, to make everybody feel that they belong in your class, and make them feel that you really care for them. That's the most, I think, the significant thing that you have to observe in remote learning. It has to be something empathetic. It has to be something genuine. It has to be um, something that comes from your heart, so that you could always make people feel that you feel also what they feel, and you're just like them. You're also having excitement, as alongside you also have anxiety in doing such things. Thank you for those people who participated. I'll go straight now to my PowerPoint so that we could be able to discuss more. When we talk about technology integration, again, oftentimes we have this notion that when we, example, as teachers, when we utilize PowerPoints, or when we make our students play games in our class, we are already doing technology use in our class. We are already making them feel that there's already technology involvement in your class. However, in reality, when we talk about technology integration, the ones with green checks are the important criteria that you need to observe when you integrate technology in your learning. Oftentimes, technology use is very sporadic. Oh, somebody would be observing me because I need to have a good evaluation points for the year. Hence, I'm going to use technology. When you integrate technology, my dear teachers, you always have to remember that it's routine based. You got to plan for it. You got to put purpose for it. You don't just think of it as a lightning bulb. It's a lightning bulb that would pop into your head, and you're going to do it because you want to do it. You always have to consider also the people who's going to be consuming technology with you. It's not always teacher centered, it's also a student and teacher instructor centered. Meaning, if your students are not having the technology that you have, how would they be able to enjoy the integration that you wanted to do if the students are not able to have that technology as well? It should be able to engage not the students, but engage the students with content. Meaning, it shouldn't be deviating from what you teach them. You're not supposed to be introducing a new topic to them. You're not supposed to use that for trivia. You're not even to turn yourself into a vlogger. You are still a teacher. That's the I think whenever there's a lot of notion these days that when you teach these days, especially with remote learning, a lot of people have that notion of turning yourself into a vlogger because you need to create content. I'd like to correct that notion. No, in formal education, you still have to remember that even if you have to create videos, or even if you have to redesign the way you teach your students, you always have to remember that when your students engage with content, there's a certain formality for it. There's a certain design for it. Hence, technology is supposed to be building and analyzing content. You're supposed to lead your students to analyze and build content so that they could understand the world we live in, despite the fact that you don't have physical interactions with them. It's supposed to be able to really make them simulate all those concepts that you introduce to them. At the same time, you allow them to reach a eureka moment, and create that personal understanding, create that personal sense that indeed this is the world we live in, using technology as an enabler. So again, technology integration, my dear teachers, is something that you have to plan very well. You You don't just integrate technology because somebody is watching you, somebody wants to you want to impress somebody, or you want to be able to maximize whatever is available in in your in your institutions or whatever. Again, technology is something, integration is something that you really have to plan well. It has to be suitable to the content that you're going to that you're going to introduce, so that at the end of the day there is a certain formality that you're going to be able to to convey to your students when you introduce that content. You're not to entertain your kids, you're not to entertain your students, you are to teach them. There's a certain difference between educating and at the same time entertaining. Again, technology integration. So when we talk about blended learning, so this case, I'm going to be talking about the one important way of integrating technology, and the one best way to be able to integrate technology is blended learning. Right. Blended learning is, again, to make it simple, is putting together, fusing together your brick and mortar traditional learning at the same time your um, e-learning or your technology learning. But in my opinion, in the time that I've been doing education technology for that matter, I was able to develop three ways of looking into blended learning. Take note, it can be looked into its purpose, it can be looked into its place, it can be looked into its spacing. That's why it's important that you got to be very aware of three important things when you do and design your technology integration or even blended learning for that matter. When we talk about purpose in blended learning, again, pedagogy is above technology, not the other way around. Meaning, what do I mean by this? When you talk about blended learning, your content, the essentials of your content is a lot important than your technology. Your content should survive or should be given more importance. You should be able to make your students realize your enduring understanding. You're supposed to be able to make your students understand the reason behind your design. Not just, it's not just about using technology for them to be able to engage with the content. Your technology is just a secondary thing. The most important thing is what they're going to learn in the what kind of content are they going to learn when they see this kind of technology. Alongside, when you talk about blended learning, it's supposed to be also looking into, there's also a certain awareness of place. Again, in blended learning, there's supposed to be effective technology integration that can aid creating meaningful learning environments. Meaning, when you design blended learning, you got to also make not only yourself understand as a teacher what kind of learning do you want to have as an outcome, you got to also be aware of what do you want your students to do when they do technology. Do you want them to engage with each other? Do you want them to collaborate with each other? Do you want them to build content? Later on, I'll dig deeper into these learning environments. And lastly, when we talk about blended learning, it also has something to do with your technology integration that would set the tone or even the pace inside your classroom. You need to be able to identify how your students will be able to learn. You need to also design, will this be synchronous? Would this be asynchronous? Would I need to be with them when they design this blended learning tool, or I can let them go and do this on their own? So when we design or when we apply blended learning, it's essential also that we need to put premium on how to be able to provide more access to content, and at the same time provide yourself also that idea of letting go. Because we teachers, we love lecturing, we love telling people what to do. Pardon me, but this is a reality that I, for one, would love to do. However, in remote setup, there should also be some sort of flexibility that we can also provide to the students, and it's also a way for us to test if indeed your students are able to really get the right content, and for them to be able to be elevated from lower order thinking to a higher order thinking skill. That's blended learning. Right. So I'm going now to go to my next slide, which would look into the idea of SAMR, a more suitable theory that would really explain why do we do technology integration in aid of content, in aid of content creation and curation would be Dr. Ruben Puentedura's SAMR model. SAMR is a theory introduced by Dr. Ruben Puentedura. And for him, he understands that technology would definitely be an enabler in introducing content to our students. That the use of technology can either enhance the way we we do work inside the classroom, but it could also transform the way we do work in the classroom. Remember, our goal is not just to be able to address learning skills of our students. It's to not only form the learning skills of our students, it also has something to do with how we're going to do work inside the classroom, and at the same time we it also has something to do with how we're going to be able to design the way we're going to be able to maximize our learning environments so that we could be able to elevate our students from lower order thinking to a higher order thinking skill. I'd like to do the discussion one by one. The first letter stands for substitution. Again, with substitution, it's it's defined as technology is just used as a direct substitution for deploying content, but there's no functional change. What do I mean by this? Example, on a normal day, when we make our students take a quiz, we want them to write it on a paper, right? And imagine if you're in a classroom, you're teaching students, which would normally range from 40 to 45. I'll take my context for that matter. Imagine every day I would be giving a quiz, and I would be asking them to write their answers on a sheet of paper with the class having 40 to 45 kids. Imagine the number of kids that I'm going to be checking. Say I normally teach 6 classes. So that's 45 or 40 times 6. That's 240 kids for one quiz alone. So imagine the number of kids, imagine the number of paper that we're going to be consuming. Imagine the number of paper that eventually will be considered trash if if and when not returned to the students right away. So essentially we wanted our environment to be conserved, right? Imagine also that we wanted also our energy to be conserved as well. That's why we resort to technology to be able to conserve our environment and at the same time to lessen the number of paper that we're going to change. That's why in substitution level, we directly utilize technology to be able to like example, lessen the number of papers that we're going to check. So example, when I did substitution in the beginning, when I started my technology integration, I started looking into the use of PDFs. So I make my students write their answers in PDF, and then they send it to me. They send it to me to my email, and then why no functional change? Because individually, they're still sending the papers individually, and I still check it one by one. So it's still on a substitution level, because again, I'm still doing the same routine that I'm doing, which is to check it individually. However, I was able to resolve that idea that I am already taking good care of the environment. Why? Because I don't check papers anymore. I'm not going to cause trash anymore when we do substitution level. Because again, we utilize technology as a way to be able to conserve environment. So that's substitution. Again, no functional change rather, because you're still using and doing the same thing. Augmentation, for that matter, is when technology is utilized as a direct substitute for your normal routine. However, there is a significant change or improvement with the way you do work. And this is the wonder of technology when I started looking at it. When one thing that I don't like as a teacher is to check. Seriously, it's a taxing job. It's something that you don't get to accomplish right away, and it's something that you really really resent doing. I for one, that's my stand. Because again, imagine if you're checking 240 students every time you give a quiz. That's a lot to do. But with augmentation, I was able to manage my time seriously. And how do I do that? Example, I turned my quiz into a form. It can be a Google form, it can be an Office form, a form. In which this form, I would key in all the questions. I will put right away the key to correction to that specific item. And then right after that, I will just give the link to the students for them to be able to answer the quiz. And then right after, they give me the form would give me a data that would allow me to check item analysis that would be able enable me to check where exactly did the students go wrong for that specific item, and I'd be able to explain to them what happened, or how am I going to explain to them what exactly was wrong in the way they answered. So augmentation is that level wherein I for one will not check anymore. It had functional improvement because in substitution I still have to check one by one, but in augmentation, because there's a form that's already made available, I don't need to check individual quizzes every time I give them quizzes. The form will do it for me. The form will give me data for them to be able to, for me to be able to explain right away where the students are. And that's essential for us teachers, that we would be able to really check right away where the students are so that we could dig deeper with how are we going to teach them. Hence, it enhanced the way we teach. It was able to give us an idea on how to be able to dig deeper with the way not only we do tasks, but we also look deeper into the manner of how we're going to teach our students. That's augmentation. Now we go to modification. And that first two enhance the way you do work, enhance the way you teach, enhance the way you utilize technology, substitution and augmentation. Now we elevate it to another level so that we can look into how we can transform the way we teach. Modification. When we talk about modification, it's allowing tech to provide significant task redesign. So say again, we go back to my quiz. When we talk about quizzes, we like our students to lessen the mistakes that they are committing whenever you give them a quiz, right? What How do you modify now the form that you did in augmentation? You can now integrate several forms of media to be able to redesign your quizzes. In forms, you can now link a specific YouTube video that's cropped, or you can also provide quizzes that would allow them to do matching time. You can also provide quizzes that would allow them to listen and do video audio analysis for that matter. You can also make them do timelines in quizzes. So there's a significant redesign of the way you do your quizzes, and these things would allow students to manipulate the technology that you present to them, so that on a normal scale, if you make them do paper again, you check these papers one by one. But with modification, you key in the right answers, the form will check it for you, it would provide feedback for you. But again, it can provide you now skills that would address higher order thinking skills that would again be utilizing several forms of media. May it be photographs, may it be audio, may it be video, or even web links for that matter, so that they could enhance also reading comprehensions that would make them dig deeper certain content that you wanted them to engage into. Lastly, the last level of what we of Dr. Pentadura's SAMR model is what we call the redefinition level. In redefinition, we allow students to create new tasks that before it's even inconceivable. You can't even be aware anymore of those tasks that before it's unimaginable. But because of technology, we are we can get to provide students an avenue for them to be able to do these activities. Let's say again, you go back to that form. that you created. Before, if you make a quiz, you write them on paper, and then you have that printed, and then you share that to your colleagues, right? Before, you can allow your colleagues to make that same quiz. They pass it on to you, and then the rest is history. But with redefinition, people can now collaborate in doing one quiz, putting a lot of minds together so that you could be able to really address the right skill for a certain task. With certain links shared to certain people, a lot of people can now easily collaborate and create certain things. Integrate a lot of utilization of media, again, lessening functional improvement, and again, utilization of technology, protecting people, protecting the environment, again, lessening the work for the teacher. That's redefinition. Before, you can't even comprehend that idea that three teachers are now collaborating in making one quiz. It's so difficult. You still have to have that meeting for you to be able to design that quiz and then pass it on to everybody for collaboration. Now, with a simple link, you can easily have that shared to people and even to your coordinators for that matter. And you can easily have that checked not only by yourself but with other people. And definitely collaboration would be at hand and it would lessen the work or the task that you're into. So that's redefinition. I'll give another example for us to be able to put more context. So for those people teaching English, these can be some of the examples that you can look into. For example, you make them for substitution. Normally, we wanted them to type. We wanted them to type a document. We wanted them to type a Word file for them to be able to have a draft of their story. But then imagine if you're teaching 40 to 45, as I said, you're checking 45 stories. So again, you wanted that to be reduced. So how do you reduce that? You can make them do a group. You make them write it through a Google Doc or even Office Doc using Office 365, and you make them share the same file to others so that the members of that group can alter the the same document and contribute in making that document. In fact, in as a teacher, if you're given the access to be able to really check that Google Doc, you can, or even that Office form for that matter, or that Word form, Office 365 Word document, you can even access history, meaning you could check who exactly did the alterations for that specific file. So that's augmentation. It lessens the number of file that the teachers would look into, and the teacher will now have lessen work, lessen number of paper to check for that specific activity. To bring it up to the level of modification, after doing that draft for Google Doc, you make them turn that story into an ebook, wherein that ebook will contain now different forms of media. They can either record their voice and make them read the story, or their voices are the ones reading the story for them to be able to address inclusivity, or they could also turn it into, like, the reading area would also lighten up so that it could also be something that little children can follow, so that you could also address those people having difficulty reading. Or they can also integrate photographs that would enhance the idea of the story, or even some videos that would enable them to enhance the essence of the story that um, they are telling in that specific activity. They put that final ebook in a hosting site for others to download, so that they can easily share that ebook. So that's making it modified because there's an integration of different forms of media. Lastly, how do you redefine that ebook? In this day and age, a lot of people love vlogging, right? And we love to be able to share our stories right away. Instead of making them do a usual storytelling written on a paper, why not make it or transform it into a vlog? So that people can easily, when they upload it into a hosting site, a secure hosting site, people can easily comment and people can easily share the story that they're able to tell. So that's redefinition. This is the SAMR model proposed by Dr. Ruben Puentedura. Again, this is how we're going. The context of SAMR model is for you to be able to contextualize how to enhance or transform the way you integrate technology in your content. Okay? As I mentioned a while ago, in blended learning again, we talk of a purpose. Purpose is already contextualized by SAMR, by Dr. Ruben Puentedura. Place, again, it's important that we create learning environments that would allow students to be able to check if if the amount of learning is really transmitted well to them. When we talk of learning environments, I took this from the Florida Center of Instructional Technology, and learning environments are normally the goal of designing learning environments is for students to find meaning and how to be able to engage with the content that you are introducing to them. The first learning environment that I'd like to introduce would be active. In active learning, you allow the students through your design to engage, to look into your content in a different manner. You can engage with them, you can make them do games, you can do a lot of exercises for you to be able to really check the amount of learning right away that you're able to transmit to them through the learning discussion, through the synchronous or asynchronous learning that you did with them. Again, collaborative. The next layer is collaborative because you allow your students to work together. In a remote setup, it's essential also that you provide avenues for students to work together. You cannot just always give them individual work. Yes, while it's going to be difficult, but it's nice also that you design work that you allow them to be able to engage with their classmates, to engage with the people around them, so that they could be able to really find more meaning in working together as we address 21st century skills. We also have this thing called constructive, because in a learning environment we have to also find, you also have to create an avenue for students to build knowledge, to be able to say what they want to say, and at the same time to be able to engage and be able to interpret the idea of what they learned in the words that they were able to understand it. Remember, in learning, you're not forming parrots. You are forming human beings. And human beings are supposed to be able to not only say what they want to say, but they are supposed to be able to convey the message in the simplest way possible so that their colleagues or the people around them could easily not only understand, but comprehend, and at the same time utilize that knowledge to the best of their ability. So that's constructive. You should also create an environment that's authentic. What is authentic learning environment? When you create an authentic learning environment, you should find ways for students to find answers to problems that are existing in community, and through simulation activities in your remote setup, in your synchronous and asynchronous learning, you provide students avenues to be able to find solutions to the problems that we are engaged with. So this is exactly where your performance task would fall into, because through performance task, you're providing more avenues for students to think deeper, apply the knowledge that you're able to teach them in the process, and at the same time create their own personal view of how to be able to suggest certain solutions in the problems that our society is confronted with. And lastly, the most important thing is the goal directed learning environment. The goal directed learning environment is essential because we need to be able to provide students that have that capacity to own the way they learn, that they themselves would be able to prove that there's a certain amount of learning that they were able to achieve for that specific time that you're doing with them. So example, when you do goal directed learning, you provide them an avenue to to combine proofs or pieces of evidence that would really showcase the amount of learning that they were able to get from that specific time that you're with them. So in goal directed, you get to make them do um, e-portfolios that would eventually last for the entire school year, that would really prove the amount of learning that they're able to get for their learning. In this matter, what is flip learning? When we talk about flip learning, again, flip learning is essential, an example of a blended learning model that can be utilized for this manner. Flip learning is a pedagogical approach in which direct instruction, again, your direct instruction is now moving from asynchronous to asynchronous space, and then you are going to transform it into a dynamic interactive learning environment that would either be done synchronous, asynchronous, and can be encapsulated in four important things. You're supposed to create a flexible learning environment that would allow them to create a learning culture with a content that's very intentional, and at the same time a professional educator is the students in um, guiding the environment, or being there present in the amount of learning into the learning process. What benefits do we get from flipping your class? Normally, as I said, why I recommend flipping your class, because again, with flipping your classroom, you would be able to really structure what exactly should be done in an individual space, what can be done in a group space, meaning what are the things that you can do on a synchronous or synchronous learning. So what benefits do you get out of it for your students? It can speak their language. Students, they like it, that they don't like boring teachers. They don't like teachers that are merely giving lectures. But with flipping your classroom, to you provide avenues for your students to be able to repeat you and rewind you if they don't understand for certain content. Flipping can also provide busy students avenue to learn. So it can also provide students, it could provide avenue for busy students and even struggling students for that matter, avenues for them to learn more and catch up for those lessons that they that they were not able to get during the time that you're having lectures with them. So with your lessons being recorded, or your PowerPoint putting with your PowerPoint integrating your voice with it, you can always allow your students to rewind you, pause you, so that you could be able to really understand where you're coming from. Okay. Flipping allows your students also to be equal. There is equitable sharing of resources in flipping. Why? Because flipping is not just for the intelligent ones. It's not only for the slow learners. It could also be addressing the amount of learning. It could also be addressing the amount of learning that you could also be even the average students can also be addressed in flip learning, meaning it's equitable. It could The design that you can create can also be creating pathways that could be accomplished by the slow learners or the fast learners or even the average students. Flipping can also be beneficial to teachers like you. It could increase interaction with your and your students. It could provide you to get to know your students better. It could allow you to discover who are those people are good in writing or those people are fast in learning technology, etc. It can provide more avenues for students to interact with each other because again with technology being an enabler, students can easily be engaged with each other, especially with doing collaborative work. It can also allow real differentiation. Why? Because it can provide pathways for students to be able to really look into the different ways of um, what's exactly that fits for them when they learn. And lastly, your it changes the way you manage your class. Because in flip learning, you don't only will be concerned of deploying content. You got to also make, as I said a while ago, there's also that sense of empathy and sensitivity that you need to be able to really apply when we take a look into your classroom setup. It's important that we get to also address the manner of how we're going to make students feel when they learn. And at the same time, it's essential also that you also provide feedback on how they'll be able to learn a certain content because again you don't see them often. You don't get to discuss to them personally what exactly went wrong with their specific grade. That's why when you do flip learning, you really need to use your computer to be able to explain the context of why you gave them this certain, let's example, a grade, for them to be able to engage more in your classroom. Of course, to parents and guardians, remember in remote learning, particularly to the lower levels, to the elementary levels, the significant role of parents and guardians would always be there. It's essential that you provide avenues for parents to be there to participate with the way you learn, with the way you'd be able to engage with them. In flipping your classroom, it changes the way you talk to your parents. It changes the way you even engage with them because it makes your class less transparent. Your parents hear you right away. Your parents will be able to see you right away. And your parents would be able to give you a great deal of how you're able to speak to them through the audio. Your parents would be able to give you a great deal of, they would really ask a lot of questions. Hence, it makes your class transparent, and it would be a great technique for your parents to reach out to you right away, especially if their kids are absent. They can easily they can easily run to you. They can easily access you through your learning management system, and it can also provide avenues since you're creating learning paths through flip learning. It could provide into a mastery program where your students can easily um, choose. Warning though, when we talk of flip learning, it's not a guarantee that it will address your 21st century skill, particularly if you don't plan it well. It's essential that you really plan your lessons well. Why? If you don't plan your lessons well, definitely there will be an imbalance between, there may have be a tendency for your technology to be way above your pedagogy. It's important again that you plan your lessons very well. It's essential that you really plan the way you put into the amount of technology that you're going to integrate in your lessons will definitely need planning so that you could be able to put the right content to it. In flipping, there's no need for you to utilize the latest technology. When you flip, you can even turn your PowerPoint into something that's lecture. You can even put your voice the way I'm doing it right now. I'm putting my voice in this PowerPoint. I'm explaining it remotely to you, but I'm not using any sophisticated technology. I'm just using my usual PowerPoint. I'm putting it on Zoom, or even I can record this and then put it into your learning management system, and the students can easily watch it anytime, anywhere, as long as there's an access to internet. so that they could always consume the technology whenever, wherever. Teaching is more, again, teaching is supposed to be given more premium than good content delivery. Take note. You're not vloggers. You're not to entertain your kids. When we teach in a flipped learning setup, whatever blended learning setup that we're doing, I'd like that to be one important consideration. Flipping is not entertaining your kids. Flipping is also about giving them the right content, teaching them the right context so that they know where you're coming from, and at the same time they know also what exactly you want them to do. It will not make your job easy. I will not sugarcoat it. It will not make your job easy. However, it can it can provide more yield when you create it into a culture. It will provide more yield. It will be providing you more yield so that you could be able to really understand where your students are coming from. I'd like you to watch this video so that you could provide more context on how to be able to integrate Bloom's taxonomy in designing your flipped learning class.
Bloom's taxonomy is arguably the most famous framework for how we think, right? Remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. We've seen this chart many, many times. So how does this connect to flipped learning? I taught like this. I spent the vast bulk of my time, think of time, at the lower two levels of Bloom's because I was spending my time teaching stuff to kids, science stuff, Newton's laws and balancing chemical equations. And that left little time for my students to apply and analyze and evaluate and create. If you will, the hard stuff, right? Because the beauty of flipped learning is what do we do with Bloom's taxonomy? We flip it. In a flipped classroom, what do is you spend the bulk of your class time in the middle or the top of Bloom's taxonomy, and you spend less time down at the remembering understanding. Now, students can't apply something they don't know about, but flip provides a space for that. A little bit more on that later. As we thought more deeply about Bloom's taxonomy, we think actually the ideal shape of Bloom's taxonomy isn't the inverted pyramid that you see here, but rather the diamond, where the bulk of your class time, if you will, is right here in the middle of Bloom's taxonomy. That's where the sweet spot is. I think it's unrealistic to spend the bulk of your time up here, like with the inverted Blooms. Most K-12 educators, if we can get them to applying and analyzing, and with some evaluation and some creation, gold happens. Let's listen to one of our experts as they share about Blooms and how that works for them.
The lower order thinking skill goes home and higher order thinking skill comes into class. In my class, especially since I teach advanced kids, we are really pushing to those higher order thinking skills at the top or more middle of Bloom's taxonomy. I've seen that diagram. I believe that was yours with the middle kind of expanded. That's where we live in AP chemistry.
Let's hear from another as she has her take on Bloom's.
We start at the lower level, which my goal is to have them do outside of class, so that in class they have access to me where I can help them move from just the vocab and say, oh, well, how does this apply to this? What do you think about this? And move more from a straight, you're listening to me, to more of a Socratic, let's actively learn what we're supposed to be learning here.
Wow. Flip learning put the right resource at the right time. You realize that the most important resource in any educational room is you, the teacher. And what do they need help on the most? They, being your students, they need help on the hard stuff, the top stuff here in Bloom's taxonomy. Not on the easy stuff. So we're putting the right resource, you, at the point of greatest need, when students are stuck, when they need help, the hard stuff, not on the easy stuff. That's flipped learning.
That is John Bergman, the pioneer of flipped learning. He is the chief academic officer of the Flipped Learning Global Initiative. And he's one of those people who's really explaining how to really flip your classroom effectively. And to contextualize it well, when we talk about flipped learning, normally whatever you utilize for your asynchronous learning, example, you wanted your videos to be flipped, you normally do that. The hard stuff, the difficult stuff are normally the one that are normally done for the synchronous learning. The difficult stuff, take note, those those topics you think are the topics that would be um, difficult for students to easily understand without you as their guide. That's normally what you, excuse me, what you design for your synchronous learning. However, those lessons that are quite easy for students to understand, and it will be easy for them to breeze the lower order thinking stuff, that's the lessons that you can put into your asynchronous learning, so that you could be able to make them repeat you anytime they want. So essential to flip learning is the idea of content curation versus content creation. Meaning, when we want to have good content, it's either we utilize other forms of media to you put them together so that there would be meaningful content to it. That's curation. And then creation, on the other hand, is the utilization of media that you created yourself. When you when you're the one who created that specific idea, that specific, let's say, web link, or even PowerPoint for that matter, or even the photographs that you took, or some audio, that's that song that you created, that's content creation. In flip learning, what do I normally recommend? It's okay for you to curate media. I also curate. A while ago, I was able to show you a video from my mentor, John Bergman. But again, it's essential also that you put meaning into the content that you curate, so that you would be able to again put premium on putting meaning on that specific content that you give your students. How do you normally flip your class? You can make your online videos that are created or curated. You can put your PowerPoint videos. You can do video conferencing the way we're doing it right now. You can also do video conferencing, or even your online worksheets, or formative works. Take note though that your flip lessons are not enough if they're not processed, if they're not supported with a right amount of assessment, and at the same time performance task. It's not just enough that you record your video and you let the students do things on their own, because our students are digital natives. They can easily breeze through a certain video without you knowing it. You got to be able to find a way that would really prove that they were able to really consume the video well. Flip lessons can be done, or should be done, with supervision. Definitely for students to ask questions. So during your synchronous class, provide avenues for students to ask questions. So let's say they didn't understand a certain content, provide students an avenue for them to ask questions. There's always a way for them to be able to clarify certain things that you mentioned in your content, or even provide feedback, because sometimes we don't hear ourselves. We don't understand our own mistakes until we get to make our students hear us. Like example, the pacing that we have whenever we speak, or even the videos that we're going to introduce to them, sometimes it's blurry. So you provide them also an avenue for them to have feedback. It's essential for them to give you feedback, so that you don't also, as the instructor, you don't also commit that same mistake again. Since they're the ones consuming your content, it's essential also that you provide them clear version of content for them to be able to really see where exactly are they coming from. So it should be within, when you flip your class, it should be within your instructional time. Say your class would only run for an hour, you don't give them a flip class that will run for 3 hours. That's unfair. Students can easily be bored. Your attention span is definitely short. Hence, when you flip your class, it should be at least half of your instructional time for them to be able to really have enough time to consume content, The remaining time would also be allocated for them to do a little bit of assessment, or even exercises for them to be able to showcase the amount of learning that they're able to get for that specific content. So when you do flip learning, there are 5 important technical skills that you need to look into when you do flip learning. It's essential that we need to be able to know the skill on how to do video creation, where to put it into what hosting site can you put it to make it an interactive video, and at the same time, what kind of learning management system would you deploy it into, and even the hardware that you're going to use. What will I be using? Sophisticated audio or video or even computer for that matter, or can I just use my smartphone and recording the exercises that I'm doing? So let me dig deep. When we do video creation includes a skill called screencasting. Screencasting is what we're doing right now. We're recording a specific computer screen output, and then you cast it, you show it to a certain audience for them to be able to capture the content that you're presenting to them, and listen to the audio narration of that specific content. So that's screencasting. An example of this would be your PowerPoint with your audio explaining whatever it is that's the content of your PowerPoint, so that your students can easily go back to it or can easily listen to you anytime they want. So that's what we call screencasting. Another term for screencasting would be video screen capture or screen recording, for those people who are not aware of it. Another skill that we can look into when we talk about video creation is this thing that we're doing right now, video conferencing. Video conferencing is utilizing a certain tool where people can go together, can conglomerate together uh, as one class, and then this video can be streamed or it can be within your learning management system, and at the same time people can ask questions or people can easily consume that content that they're seeing in that specific video streaming. So Zoom is an example of a video conferencing tool that we can look into, and the skill that we need to look into for video conferencing is the ability to be able to manipulate your tools. So example, you can utilize in this case of our screen, you can utilize certain tools like your annotation. So you can utilize also the certain chat. You can also look into there's also polling for certain streaming apps for that matter. Going back, let me go back. Wait, let me go back. I've been wait, 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 there, where am I? There. That's video creation. Okay. We go into hosting. Hosting is a skill wherein your created video should be placed now in a platform where you can upload it, and then once you uploaded it there, you can share that video through a link, or you can either live stream it to others so that they can easily consume it in the internet. So like example, what you're doing right now, you are screencasting your video you're screencasting your video through YouTube, and you are now seeing it. Anybody can see it anywhere they are, as long as they have internet access to it. So there, that's hosting. So you need to put it into a hosting site that has um, enough enough size, enough bytes for it, so that you can easily put your videos and can be accessed anytime, anywhere. Interactive videos and text. What do I mean by this? Remember, as I said, videos are not supposed to be videos itself. Videos are supposed to be integrated, or you're supposed to be able to have that ability to check if the students are indeed able to check the videos that you're able to prepare. So I recommend 2 important apps that you can look into. It could be Edpuzzle and Play Posit. I'll dig deeper into the 2 apps later on. Learning management system. What are learning management systems? It's essential these days to always consider safe and secure environment. That's why we highly recommend that you choose a learning management system where you can easily deposit or create your content for your instruction. You could also create, or you can also deliver your data, and it could also be a depository of assessment and feedback for your, not only for your students, but even for the content that you're creating yourself. Lastly, it could also facilitate communication and interaction for you, for your students, and even for the parents that are helping your students along the way. So learning management systems, the choosing of a learning management system is essential in a remote setup, so that you could always protect the students in in doing remote learning. Lastly, the materials that you utilize for online or remote learning would definitely be under hardware. So you could this would include your mobile learning devices, your iPads, your laptops, or even your smartphones for that matter. It could be these things that you can recommend not only for yourself as the instructor, but it has to also be something that can be standardized for your students and even for the parents. It has to be communicated to the parents. Why? Because especially for the lower levels, it's essential for the parents to be made aware of what kind of technology hardware would they be using, so that they could be able to help their children do their remote learning experience very well. So when you do video creation, these are the apps that I'm recommending. So especially for those of you who are using iOS, you can look into QuickTime Player. QuickTime Player is the iOS or the Mac version of screen recording. It records. It can capture the screen. It can capture your audio. It can screen. It can also do screenshots of your desktop or whatever's in your desktop for Mac. But for Windows, I highly recommend A2 Catcher or Xbox Windows 10. Again, A2 Catcher, Windows 10, Xbox, or Screencastify. Screencastify can also be something recommended for Chrome users. Again, for them to be able to record their PowerPoints efficiently. Even the PowerPoint tool for that matter, for those of you using Windows 10, you have a PowerPoint already that there is a PowerPoint recorder that's already embedded in your PowerPoint setup, particularly those who are using Windows 2019 or Office 365. You just need to enable it in your Office 365 account, and your PowerPoint can now be exported as a video so that it can easily be deployed, or it can easily be placed in your hosting sites or your learning management systems. For video conferencing, these are the applications that I'm recommending. Flipgrid is normally recommended for those of you who are engaged into demonstrations. For those of you who wanted your students to do for you to listen to your students, I recommend Flipgrid. Flipgrid is a video recording tool wherein for a few minutes, your students could be able to showcase the amount of learning that they're able to get from your content. So Flipgrid is a good feedback feedback giving model there for videos. It can also be something that could be secure. Your students can easily like showcase the amount of, particularly for those teachers who are teaching English or even non-academic subject like PE or technology livelihood education. Flipgrid is a good app for you to be able to use, so that you can right away get feedback from your students from the demonstrations or from the skill that you wanted them to get for that specific content you present to them. There are other video conferencing app that you can look into. Um, Zoom is one of them. You have Big Blue Button, you have Google Hangout Meet, you have Microsoft Teams for you to be able to address that idea of doing synchronous learning with your students through video conferencing. Hosting sites. Hosting sites are normally the cloud-based apps where you can put your materials. You can secure that your materials you can ensure that your materials are safe, and you can easily share it to your students. So for those of you using Mac, you can put it into your iCloud. For those of you using video Windows 10, or for those of you using Android or Chrome for that matter, um, Android or the 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 Chrome computers, you can look into OneDrive for Microsoft. You can also look into Google Drive, and you can also look into Dropbox, where you can put all your content there. You can get the link once you upload it and share it right away to your students. Edpuzzle and PlayPosit are two important applications that I normally recommend for students to check, for teachers to check if indeed your students are really learning exactly from you. Allow me to give a demonstration of what can Edpuzzle or PlayPosit do to your video. Right away, what's beautiful about this application is that you're not only allowing your students to watch a video, you're also allowing them to provide an avenue for you to be given an avenue to really check what exactly are they doing in your video. Notice that in my video, in the video that you have in your screen, there are dots underneath. Once the video, once the video plays, okay, once the video plays, it can stop at a certain question, and then the video will not move until such a time that you answer the question that you made, and then continue.
It was
That's
created
the
by this
only
guy,
time
Dr.
that the
Ruben
video will
Fuentedora,
continue.
who believes that using technology allows us to think differently and perform new tasks.
The task is the same and there's no functional change. The technology is being used as a substitute.
Note, as you can see, it stops at a certain point because here you can showcase, you can really be able to really check that your students are really consuming your videos very well, because you're already plugging in certain tools that would enable you to really check if they're taking your videos seriously. For younger students, like in the elementary until the junior high school, I highly recommend Edpuzzle. But as they go senior high school, PlayPosit would definitely be of great help. So let me go back to my PowerPoint so that we can continue talking about the two things. These are some ways on how to be able to differentiate Edpuzzle and PlayPosit. Why I recommend Edpuzzle for the lower levels. Again, given the functionalities that it has, it's definitely addressing the skill that we need to build for the younger levels. But with PlayPosit, it can address a lot of higher order thinking skills, which would be necessary for the senior high school, or even the higher levels of junior high school, or even college for that matter. Particularly those teachers are really engaged with the utilization of video. You can plug in questions for you to be able to really check if the students are taking your video seriously. Edpuzzle and PlayPosit are best apps that you can look into, so that it can allow you to engage more with your topic. Allow me to look into learning management systems. When you choose a learning management system, I think these are important things that you really need to look into. One, it should avoid unwanted features. It should allow you to integrate integrate other apps that's not only limited to whatever you're usually using. It could allow other apps also to be integrated, even those apps that you usually use in your class. It should support customers anytime, anywhere. It should have good scheming of content. It should be affordable. It should not have hidden costs. It should have mobile support. It can be utilized or it can be accessed through phones, and it should provide a roadmap which could support your school's framework, your school's education plan or education vision. It should be reliable, scalable, and secure, and at the same time should protect not only the students but even your data that's being placed in in that learning management system. I think one thing that you can look into, I really highly recommend you explore Noadu, which is very much integrated with Microsoft. It's one of those applications right now, one of the learning management systems that we can explore on for us to be able to really check the flexible learning environment that we are really in really what we really wanted our students to put into or to have the experience when they do remote learning. This will be my last slide for today. When you do remote learning, I have 10 tips for you to really note of when you plan and do your workflow for your remote learning. First, you plan your lessons and have it checked. Don't just execute a lesson without you having another eye looking into it. It's good to have that sense of collaboration. Again, no man is an island. It's good to have a colleague teaching the same content, or even your coordinator to check your lesson so that you could see if your how would your lesson be trimmed, because sometimes we have the tendency to really plan a lot when in remote learning we really have to plan small, because again the attention span of your students in a remote learning is really small, so you really need a lot of collaborations when you plan it out with other people who could be content experts for your specific tool. Not only your lesson, even your videos, have it checked. It's good also to watch them. It's good also to ask for feedback. Why? Because sometimes we're too secure about ourselves, and it's good. I highly recommend that we also have another eye looking into the video that that we either curate or create, so that we could improve the way we can deploy content to them. Why do I want you to look into your content? One, sometimes your videos cannot be understood by your students. Sometimes the videos that you select have accents, or sometimes it can be taken from it, the people speaking in that video may have accents, and that might have an effect on the way students would understand the video or the content that you're telling them. That's why it's important also that you watch the video the whole time and allow them to really, and you yourself, you got to have that security that you know the content that you see in that video that you're going to present to them, or even the video that you recorded yourself. Uh it has to be something that is checked. It has to be something that is um given critique, not because we want to put you down, but again it's more of improving the way we do things, and to also boost the confidence of every teacher. It's not because we wanted to put you down, again to boost the confidence of the teachers that are really exploring remote learning. Number two, when you do video presentations, put a script. Make sure that you have a script. Again, when you know what you're going to talk about in your video, you would easily trim down time when you know exactly what you're going to talk about. Because if you talk a lot for a certain time for a certain PowerPoint, it would definitely consume a lot of time, and your students will not look at your videos, believe me. So you need to put a script when you do your lecture so that you can maximize time and you only say the important stuff that you want to say. Third, create or curate appropriate content. Again, you got to mention also, you have to also put in mind the students that you have whenever you do your when you plan your lesson. It's not all only for you, because we teachers, we love content. We love getting anything that that's easily related to a content that we are teaching. But seldom do we consider the students in our care. We have to always consider the students in our care, because they're the ones consuming the content that we're going to put in a learning management system that we're going to utilize. So you have to also check if the words that was used in that specific video can easily be understood by your students, or you can also check the items that's been introduced in that content, or even check the video quality, even the accent, or even uh, the voice quality of the people speaking the content. Again, it affects the way students learn remotely. Fourth, choose your screencast method. Um, Again, for Windows, for those people who are using Windows computer, check what really suits your hardware and utilize it. Make sure that it's going to yield a good quality video, and at the same time, put it in a good hosting site that can easily can be accessible to your students, um, for them to be able to learn well. Fifth, check on accountability. Particularly, this goes to those kids who do not watch their videos well. You always make them suffer the consequences if they don't do the activities that you give them. So example, in my case, whenever I flip my class, I always ask them to write notes, or I love them making mind maps. Why mind maps? Because I want them to be able to interpret the way they understood my lesson. So after watching the video, even if there's already ed puzzle in the video that I was able to create, it has to be turned into me with their own version of a mind map. Because the mind map for me is a proof that they indeed understood the content of the lesson. So if they don't submit a mind map, it is a consequence on their end that they will not be able to understand the next lesson because they don't have the mind map. So you got to give them a certain sense of accountability, that if they don't do their work, it would make the next work difficult for them. Even, like example, alongside with accountability as teachers, if we curate a video, like example, if you notice my PowerPoint, if it's not mine, you cite the source. It doesn't hurt to ask people, or to acknowledge the source of whatever video, whatever audio, or whatever media that you utilize in creating your content. It's important that you acknowledge them. Why? It is a culture. Remember, flipped learning is also about creating a learning culture. You don't want your students to plagiarize. You got to provide them also that modeling for them to really showcase the kind of behavior you wanted them to manifest in your class. So it's part of accountability. It's part also of making them, of molding their behavior as students. We teachers should be the models of good digital civility. We teachers should be the models of good digital citizenship. Hence, we put that also into practice when we do remote learning. Sixth, ensure access for all. Meaning, if students cannot afford to have access for internet, let's say they do not have access for internet, you can provide them printouts, you can provide them storage materials, you can plug it in through a thumb drive, and perhaps put the videos in the thumb drive, coordinate with the parents, and then make them watch the videos online, at home using their own laptops, or if they have access, you can put them all into a learning management system so that it's easier for them to access everything that they need to put or they need to accomplish in your class. Again, remote learning is supposed to be equitable. It's not to highlight who does not have and who has. It should be it should be something that would provide more avenues for learning, rather provide a sense of social um, discrimination, or creating stratification among people. So again, provide and ensure that there's access for everybody. Seventh, test for comprehension. Why I utilize Edpuzzle? Again, it's a test for comprehension for me to really check, for me to do formative assessment, for me to really ensure that the students are really taking video seriously, and for the students to really give me feedback right away for whatever activity that they did. Be open to feedback. Be open be open to whatever your students are giving you. If your audio is really unclear, that's okay. If if they see you conducting yourself not in a good way, it's okay. You always have to be open to these feedback, because sometimes we're too comfortable about ourselves, and we don't see ourselves in front of the computer. It's the students who see us whenever we are doing video conferencing. That's why it's important that we really have to be very sensitive on how we're going to conduct ourselves on video, even the way we enunciate our words on video. It's essential also that we need to clearly say things so that they could be able to get the right content. Second to the last, make your students know your availability. I know working remotely is very hard. It's important also that you don't spread yourself too thinly, because there may be times that your students would just barge in, pop out in a question at wee hours of the day. So it's very important that you always tell your students your schedule. Why? So that you don't spread yourself too thinly, and they would know that, and they would acknowledge that you have other things to do, that you're not just their teacher. You're also, it could be that you're also a mom in your house, you have also kids, you're also facilitating the remote learning of your other kids, you're also a wife to your husband, and you're also to check other things, and you're doing household chores. Again, it has to be articulated well to your students so that they don't bug you on those times that they're not supposed to bug you. They're supposed to be doing all these things on a certain structure that you're providing them. And motivate them. Remember, in a remote learning, it's important to be empathetic. It's important to make them feel that you're riding the same boat. I know students are also stressed. It's so stressful not to see your friends personally. It's so stressful not to see your teachers every day compared to when you see them every day. So motivate them, make them feel that you're still the same teacher that they know whenever you do remote learning. Make Whenever you do stuff, whenever you do open your class with a little icebreaker, or you do a little bit of chat, or you do a little bit of making them do um, getting to know activities, so that they would still feel that you're still together despite the distance, and them being in their houses. And lastly, very important, get your parents on board, get your administrators on board. Flip learning will not be successful if you don't have the support of your admin, you don't have the support of your parents. Again, why parents? Because remember, remote classes are normally done at home, and the parents are normally the ones helping their kids set up their computers. The kids are the ones, they're the ones helping their teacher. So it's important also that you provide avenues for these um, it's also important that you can provide them avenues for them to know how exactly can they be of help for their children, and even the administrators, because something wrong that happens in remote classroom, they're the ones supposed to be giving you policies that will serve as your guide when you conduct your remote classes. So it's important that they are on board. They should provide structures for learning, and they should provide also support for you when you do your remote setup. Right. So now is an avenue for us to ask questions. Um, I'm looking into now. Thank you for the good feedback that you're giving. I really thank you. I really appreciate. Right. Like to follow up the webinar. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Thank you for sharing your knowledge here. Thank you. I really appreciate the nice feedback. Thank you. Thank you very much for the feedback. Um, Again, if you have questions, please type them in using the live chat. I would appreciate answering it. Right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Right. It's loud and clear. Thank you. Right. Um, I will be giving a copy of this presentation for those of you who wanted to have a copy. I will provide the CHRDF team a copy of the presentation so that they could also share it to you if and when you need it. Right. Right. Thank you for the nice words. Thank you. We are already stuffed with knowledge on how to face the challenge of the new norm, applying these blended learning remotely. Thank you. Thank you. Um, I really appreciate. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate all your good comments. I hope that, again, the most important test is for you to be able to really put context on whatever you learn. I know there's a lot of techno house these days, but the most important thing is, again, put it into your real context. I know it's really, really difficult for people right now, for teachers particularly, to really embark this journey to remote learning. But again, as you said it, teachers helping teachers. Hashtag teachers helping teachers. We just have to ride the boat together. We just have to help each other. Again, you can easily reach me. Um, I can definitely share to you in the PowerPoint. I can definitely share to you my handles so that if ever you have questions, um, I can definitely help you out. I will share there my contacts, my social media handles, so that you can easily share. You can easily reach out if ever you have questions. There you go. How can I love that question? How can you, the parents, again, this is from Karen Del Rosario Cruz. How can the parents that you don't want to enroll your child this? Okay, I understand also the predicament of every parent enroll their children for this year. Believe it or not, I've been seeing in education networks that there are a lot of schools that are engaged into remote learning. So with the plans that I've seen, there are a lot of schools that are not really opening the doors of their schools for their students to really go into the physical school. So if you were to ask me, I think it's important that as parents, you really need to ask first what exactly would be the education plan, the education transition plan of your school before you even decide first of not enrolling your kids to schooling. Imagine if your child is not doing anything for one semester. What will they do? Just watch YouTube or perhaps other things, or just consume technology for that matter. Why not inquire well from your previous school how exactly would they be conducting remote learning, and from there ask also how exactly will remote learning be done, how what would be the grading system, or even what would be the facility of learning, what exactly should you as parents be doing for you to be able to be of help to your children. Again, inquire first before you even decide. I know there's no vaccine yet for 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 everybody, and we teachers are also anxious. Even us, we are even scared to go to the physical schools, because again, we don't even we're not even aware, we're not even sure yet of how school's going to be conducted. As of the moment, we're still in the planning stage still of how we're going to be able to conduct remote learning. But the most important thing is, before you even decide, inquire first. Or if your school hasn't given you yet any structured plans of how they're going to conduct remote learning, perhaps you can also explore on how to be able to really explore other schools that are already on board on remote learning, so that your child will not be stuck for one semester or even 1 year because of this pandemic scare. So again, as parents, it's important for us to also be vigilant, to be vigilant on how are we going to really ensure that there's continuity of learning despite the fact that there's a scare happening. Thank you everybody. So thank you, Karen. I really appreciate your question. Thank you for learning the apps sites. Thank you everybody. Again, teachers helping teachers. Thank you. So what are some of your tools and best app that you could suggest or recommend for preschoolers? Nice question. For preschooler, again, it's important also that you got to ask your school. You need to have a plan of how you're going to do synchronous learning. Again, I highly recommend for preschoolers synchronous learning, because remember, they're still young. Giving them asynchronous learning would be quite a deal, because again, it entails a huge amount of cooperation with the parents, because again, the parents are supposed to be the ones assisting their children on the setups of computer, or even the learning process itself, because there's a need for an adult supervision for the child to be able to do work. I've seen a lot of I've seen a lot of colleagues doing work for preschool. Most of them would normally do it on video conferencing. Some of them would utilize in Zoom. There's this thing wherein you can change the background of your video. So example, if you're talking about virtual backgrounds, yeah. So you can change your backgrounds. Let's say you wanted to talk about vacation, you can utilize those tools that would enable you to really set the mood for your students to for certain content that you wanted them to learn. So example, if you wanted them to do science, you can change your background into a laboratory, something like that. Or in Teams, you can also change the backgrounds in Microsoft Teams. There. So I've already given you a video. Yeah. So in Zoom, there's this thing called choose virtual background. So when you change your virtual background, you can make your students feel that you example you're doing space, you're studying stars. You can change a background and make it into an astronomical background, sort of. Or um, you do a demonstration again using Flipgrid for your students to really showcase what exactly did they learn for a specific topic. So let's say in Flipgrid, you can do a lot of show and tell. You can do a lot of, like, if you make them do clay molding, you can make them explain the clay molds using Flipgrid. So for youngsters, again, I really recommend Flipgrid, because again, this is for them to be able to make them feel that you're still talking to them, and at the same time it engages. When they do videos, they speak, they explain, so you're building higher forms of skills, higher order thinking skills when you make them do do video recording. So those are some apps that you can look into. Okay. Hope, thank you very much. Hope there is a webinar for you. Right, right. I know a lot of people are into techno house. Perhaps some speakers would definitely explore, showcase with you certain applications that can help you out in techno house for certain uh, skill that you wanted to explore into. Again, um, I appreciate the love. Are there other apps? I answered that already. What platform can you recommend for far-flung areas where internet access is not available? Again, as I mentioned, if you have if you're having difficulty with your internet access, it's important to be aware of your learning environment. Don't push it if you don't have it. Um, Remote learning is not just about highlighting social stratification. Why not make them use your books? Why not make them, again, give importance to your books, give importance to photocopies, give importance to handouts, give importance to paper. If you really cannot produce anything because you're within the far-flung areas, again, you can still do flip learning even if you're checking it on paper. The most important thing is how you're going to plan it out, and you're not repeating the lesson that you're going to present to them. Example you example in times when you see them. I heard in some schools they're going to do hybrid learning, wherein they still need to go to school at a certain time of the week. So in far-flung areas, if you're going to explore hybrid learning, it's important that you make them do asynchronous learning at home, perhaps give them handouts, make them utilize their books, but you don't repeat whatever you made them do at home in school. That's the most important thing. You make them do something that would be a little hard, that would be harder, and that would have some connection to the activity that they did at home, and would reinforce that skill that they did at home. So that's more important. Okay. What LMS can you recommend for skill subject like stenography? Stenography, again, the LMS is not important for me. If you're going to ask me, I think what's important is that you are going to be able to use an app that would showcase the skill of the students. So example, um, in Flipgrid, they need to be able to record a video that would record the way they do the stenography skill, right? So make them record that the student is the one doing the skill, and then they post it on Flipgrid. So again, it doesn't really matter what LMS are you going to utilize. The most important thing is you utilize a video capture tool that would showcase if they're really doing the wrong thing or the right thing. You can perhaps ask the parents, assistants to, let's say, record the video and not really to do the activity. It's still the student who should do the activity so that they could be able to really showcase what exactly should be done. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Flipgrid, yes, Flipgrid is a good app. Yes. What else? Thank you very much. I really appreciate this time with you. I really wanted to have more time for everybody to be with us today. I know there's a lot to learn. There's really a lot to learn. But I hope with this little bit of time that we shared with each other, we could be able to at least rock the boat smoothly together. Don't push it. I like that. Don't push it if you don't have it. Great. Don't push it if you don't have it. Don't 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 do it if you don't have it. Because again, charity begins at home. You don't give what you don't have, right? Right, right. Thank you very much, everybody. I really, really appreciate this time with you. Um, I hope the next time that we're going to be sharing it with each other, it will be more deeper scaled, and it will be more geared towards creating more um, instructions, and even fun-filled activities that would provide feedback on your experiences on remote learning. You will definitely learn a lot from the first few weeks, few months of engaging into your remote learning. I think the most important thing is to be open to it. Just remain open to it, because um, in the mistakes that you create along the way, that's where you learn. uh, it wasn't easy for me when I started looking into blended learning, when I started looking into flip learning, or ed tech for that matter. It wasn't easy, it wasn't a breeze. There's a lot of birthing pains, but as you go along, you'd really learn a lot from it, and you get to improve yourself, and you get to gain more confidence as you do a lot of things. Right. Thank you so much too. Thank you everybody. There's this, what very cool app can you recommend for science subject? For science class, I'm let me give that also as a context. I'm not a science teacher. I am a social studies. I am a social science teacher. I'm a social studies teacher. Economics. I do economics. I do a lot of history. But for science, I think it's good that you also explore applications that would enable you to do a lot of flipping. By the way, my mentor John Bergman for flip learning is a chemistry teacher. He did a lot of flipping for um, chemistry. So if you follow him on YouTube, you would see a lot of his content for not only for edtech, even for chemistry. He has a lot of content for chemistry and science for that matter. What else? For science, find a lot of ways if you're into Office 365. Find a lot of ways that would enable you to do a lot of do a lot of engagement. There's an app that I am that I'm so in love with not right now in science. There's this thing called Merge Cube. You can read you can research about that, because this is now the era of AR VR, augmented reality, yeah, virtual reality. Merge Cube is an application that could allow you to look into um, different science subjects. Like example, there's this app in Merge Cube called Mr. Body. When you teach, like example, the different systems of the body, you just scan the cube, and then there's a human there that would allow you to look into the different organs of the body. So Merge Cube is a beautiful app that would allow your students to really explore into um, augmented reality, virtual reality, especially that we are going fourth industrial revolution. I highly recommend Merge Cube for science classes. So alongside Mr. Body, there's also this app wherein you can explore the different the different planets of the solar system, and then the kids are just scanning the cube. They're like merely holding the different planets of the solar system. So again, Merge Cube is a highly recommended app. You can look into that. Right. Although I'm teaching college, but the lecture you gave is very right. Merge Cube, right? And in Merge, you can also find it. You can find, because normally the cube has to be purchased like I think around $10. I'm not sure of, but again, there are a lot of printouts. You just Google it. You just have to search for it. Um, there's a lot of printouts in PDF that can allow you to that can be considered like a customized Merge Cube, and you just have to download the apps for Merge Cube in your Play Store or your Apple Store, right? So there. What else? Thank you. I think that's it. I'm very grateful. Thank you. I'm very grateful to be with you today also. Thank you. All right. Thank you. What else? Are there apps? Oh, I answered that already. Homeschooling, what platform can you suggest for teachers to use in group activities? Again, for those of you doing group activities, again, synchronous learning. It's important again to what exactly do you want to do in group learning. So if you wanted to do lecture, your normally learning management systems can already provide video conferencing tools. Example, if you're using Microsoft Teams, right? There's already a conference tool app there in Microsoft Teams. Or if you're using, let's say, if you're using Google Apps, so there's also Google Hangout Meet that you can utilize. Again, the most important thing is the most important thing for group activity is your structure. The most important thing is what kind of content are you going to be giving your students out. So example, if you're doing, make sure that your make sure that your lecture is really really short, so that the rest of the activity can also be given for a little bit of kamustahan, a little bit of icebreakers, or a little bit of activities, or a little bit of games. Do Kahoot, do a lot of quizzes, do a lot of Quizlet, so that right away while you're doing the activity together, the students feel engaged. The students feel that you enjoy the work. You're not just there to provide them work. At the end of the day, you got to make them feel that learning is still fun. Despite the distance, learning is still fun. So there. Bye everybody. Thank you everybody. Thank you. Nako, hindi ko nasagot si Filipino. For Filipino. Wait, Filipino subject. Ay, salamat po. Salamat po. Okay, for Filipino, pwede din po kayong ulitin ko po, kailangan po talagang mahalaga yung disenyo ng klase. So halimbawa, kung kayo po ay nagtuturo ng Ibong Adarna, nagtuturo po kayo ng mga Florante at Laura. So mahalaga na kapag nagtuturo po kayo ng literatura, meron kayong merong mahalagang lektura na dapat tignan. So yon. So ganun din yung mga nagtuturo ng Rizal, content-based subjects, whether it's history, Filipino, literature, or like religion, or subjects that are um, really into core. Again, the most important thing is you design your lesson. The design should only be straight to the point. It's not beating around the bush. And again, if you notice my presentation, try your very best to lessen your words. The more words would be there in your PowerPoint, the more crying it is for your students not to listen. Again, it's essential for your students to really have a lot of abilities to listen to you. You got to teach them to listen. Otherwise, these kids will just remain bored in your class. So, example, if you're teaching Filipino, pwedeng naglektura po muna kayo ng halimbawa, mga 20 minutes, ginamit niyo po yung PowerPoint, tapos magbigay po kayo ng maraming pwede po kayo maglagay ng video tungkol doon sa Florante at Laura, or doon sa kung ano man literatura yung tinuturo nyo. Maikling video lang. Pagkatapos meron kayong pa-konting activity, meron kayong pwedeng magpa-kahot po kayo, pwede po kayong magpa-game. Tapos, proseso nyo po yung activity para masaya po habang nag-aalok kayo ng, ng content nyo, ng lesson ninyo. Ganon din po sa mga subjects na kagaya ng history. So, whenever I do history, I put a little bit of history channel, which would run normally 1 to 3 minutes, 1 to 4 minutes max na po yon. And then I just expound on it, but I don't repeat whatever the video say. What I'm going to do is to to put processing on what they watched so that it could be more deeper and it would be more viable to them, so that when they relate it to other classes, when they relate it to real life scenario, it's easy for them to really find um it's easy for them to do inferencing, and it's easy for them to really relate it to what's happening in real life. Ayon. Ano pa? Okay. What app or site? Okay. What app? Ulit. Okay. May replay. I'm not sure what time the replay is, but I'm sure there is a replay, right? What app or site can be applicable for grade one, specifically if you want them to take a little game, right? Again, for grade one, there's a lot of gamification tool for quizzing. Pwede po kayong, you can do a lot of quizzes. Quizizz, quizzes.com. Especially if you're, yung gusto niyo po medyo self-paced, medyo ano lang, yung more on accuracy, answer accuracy. Or you want, example, Kahoot, you want your students to look into colors, parang pera o bayong na online version. Right. So Kahoot can also be a good way to test students for a content that you wanted them to, that you taught them for that specific activity. Or there's also this app called Quizlet, Quizlet, Q Quizlet. So Quizlet can also be an app wherein you can also check them, check their comprehension for example concepts. And then through Quizlet, you can readily check if they're able to really get it. Like example, if you're teaching like a certain story and there are vocabulary words that you wanted to introduce to them, Quizlet is a very good game app. So I really love using those apps in my class. So again, quizzes, Quizizz. Kahoot is Kahoot. And then Quizlet is Quizlet. Yo. Right. Think, ano pong hashtag ang ilalagay sa webinar series? Again, hashtag teachers need teachers. So that's the hashtag for today. Right. There you go. Again, thank you very much. Thank you everybody for participating. Thank you for being here. Thank you for spending time with us today. I really appreciate those people who are with us today. Uh, Regardless of your subject, regardless of your place, regardless of culture, wherever you're coming from, again, teachers need teachers. I really appreciate everybody engaged into this lesson right now. Right? How about in math? Okay. Again, my context is social studies, but again, for math teachers, um, there's this there's this app called GeoGebra. GeoGebra, it's like for graphing. If you're teaching high school, GeoGebra can definitely be of help for um, allowing students to do accurate graph, and then you make them interpret it into like coordinates. Yeah, coordinates. So GeoGebra can be a good math tool, or Desmos. There, Desmos. I'd like to correct that. Desmos was the one for the graphing. Desmos um, can allow your students to do a lot of graphing, and even you can even do artworks in Desmos with all the points or the coordinates that you do that you would that the drawing would have in a Cartesian coordinate plane. So I also recommend that. What else? You have Socrative, right? Science also would be a good. Socrative can also be a good app for science. You can explore that. They really have good content. Khan Academy, um, Khan Academy is a good content for math, and science. I'd like to give this big shout out to my friend, number bender from math. Um, number bender is Dr. Peter Esperanza. If you're aware of him, I'm sure you can easily search number bender in YouTube. Most of his math content are all contextualized to DepEd. So I think you can also look into his content. Number bender. You search for him in YouTube, subscribe, and definitely his videos can be of help. He teaches calculus, I think higher math, right? Math in primary level. Math in primary level. You can, I think there's a lot of there's a lot of um there's a lot of curated videos right now on YouTube. But again, my caveat would always be watch the videos well and be sensitive of the voice quality, the audio quality of the video, because again, the manner of how the voice would be conducted would also affect the manner of understanding of our children, um, especially if they have accent. um, I think the most um, industrious people who are really into content creation for primary in math are Singaporeans. I've watched several of them. It's just that the accent is really, really very significant. So I think you really have to be very sensitive though with the videos that they're going to curate. Again, YouTube has a lot of them, but again, watch it first. Panoorin nyo ng mabuti, start to finish. And then if you think it's not essential to, like example, a topic that you're doing, pwede, you can also crop it, shorten it, so that you would only make the students watch the significant part of that video. I hope I was able to answer your question. Apps for Filipinos, for example, and the like. Sa Pilipino, ulitin ko kanina, pwede kayong gumamit ng mga gaming tools kagaya na nabanggit ko, yung Quizlet, yung quizzes, yung Quizlet lalong-lalo na kasi sa Pilipino marami kayong mga salitang pambokabularyo, yung mga salitang ginagamit lalong-lalo na kapag kayo nagtuturo ng mga literatura. So, pwede kayong gumamit ng Quizlet kasi may mga salita doon, tapos meron ding mga ibig sabihin. So, pwedeng gamitin yon para masiguro ninyo kung nauunawaan man ng mga bata yung mga salitang pinapaaral nyo sa kanila. Pwede din kayong mag-integrate ng mga maiiksing video, or sa PowerPoint po, meron po akong tip pa pala sa PowerPoint. Pwede na po kayong maglagay ng, kung gusto niyo po, masipag po kayong gumawa ng mga kwento, yung kunyari 3D video, pwede po kayong mag-insert ng 3D video sa PowerPoint ninyo para yung mga video ninyo or mga graphics ninyo gumagalaw, hindi po siya flat na kagaya na nakikita niyo sa screen. So meron po doon sa PowerPoint, pwede po kayong mag-insert ng 3D image para pag nagkwento po kayo, mukha po siyang kwento. Like example, kung gusto niyo pong gumawa ng kwento tungkol dun sa ako ay may alaga, asong mataba. So yun, pwede niyo pong i-transform yung PowerPoint nyo na parang kinakwento niya po yung literaturang itinuturo po ninyo. Yun, using the 3D image inserted in PowerPoint right now. Ano pa ba? Sorry, I didn't. May I know what exactly is ESV? Sorry. Is this about value education? Tama ba ako? Kung value education, kagaya na nabanggit ko, religion, or even those subjects that are based on content, like mine, history, or even English, literature, or religion, or even Filipino. Again, focus more on your content. Focus on digital citizenship. Particularly Contemporary art. Wait, am I correct? If it's for value education, focus on digital citizenship. This is one thing I'd like you to venture into. With remote learning, there's really a need for our teachers to really venture on digital citizenship, especially, believe it or not, there can be bullying that might happen in remote learning. There can be a lot of data compromising in digital learning. If your kids, if the parents of your kids are not really well educated, even you as a teacher, you can even compromise also your data. So again, venture into digital citizenship. Yon, pagpapakatao, correct. Um, so importante yung value formation ng mga bata. Um, I recommend also that you explore. Um, there's this web. I'm just thinking of what this. Wait, let me. There's this favorite web that I'm into in terms of um, common. Wait. I forgot the full name of the web. Digital citizenship. Wait, I'm just searching for it. Common sense. There, common sense. Right. Common sense education. I think for particularly for those teachers teaching edukasyong pagpapakatao. I'm sure this is all about it's all about value education, value formation. Please explore commonsense.org, right? commonsenseeducation.org, particularly for digital citizenship. It's really I highly recommend that web for us to not only educate our students on the proper behavior, on again creating a good digital footprint. Kasi sanay tayo na, lalong-lalo na tayong mga teachers, sanay tayo na sinasabi lang natin lahat ng gusto nating sabihin. Yung my wall, my right, my page, my wall, my right. Remember, whatever you say online is your digital footprint. So is that the way you wanted yourself to be known by people? You don't dichotomize your social media presence with your online presence with your personal presence. Again, parehas lang yon, isang tao lang yon. So we really need, and we it's definitely important for teachers to really be very aware of um, their digital footprint these days. 'Di ba kasi ayan, marami na tayong kaso ngayon ng ng minsan sa atin joke lang. I mean, I'm sure kilala natin si 50 million guy. Nasaan siya ngayon? I mean, again, we really need to be very careful of the words we say, whether it's personal or online. Again, the words that we say as teachers can make or break people. So we have to be very conscious of that. Ano pong app ang magaganda para sa mga nagtuturo ng araling panlipunan? Araling panlipunan. Even apps right now, History Channel has its own app online. There's a lot of encyclopedia that's already on board, like Britannica is a good source of data. Even for those people teaching economics, I normally use some of the data introduced by Khan Academy. What else? History Channel is my favorite. So, especially I go back to teaching mga world wars, like mga uh, Cold War, History Channel the best. Or even like the Roman civilization, or even the different civilization. I always refer to the content curated or created by the History Channel. Intermediate level. Yun din po actually yung gusto kong i-encourage sa lahat ng mga nagtuturo ngayon, lalong-lalo na press time nagtuturo sa mga araling panlipunan. Part of this webinar is also an encouragement for everybody to really venture on creating content. Gawa tayo ng content na sarili. Yun yung problema ng mga nagtuturo ng Philippine history. Konti lang po talaga yung gumagawa ng content, reliable content. At mas maganda na mag-venture tayo sa tamang content. Kasi konti lang talaga yung gumagawa. And not only konti, minsan ang question is the credibility of the content that you're really doing. So it's essential that you really curate or create the right content for them. Para yung mga bata, tama din, hindi sila na fake news, di ba? So, kailangan reliable yung sources, yung mga kino-curate nating sources hindi galing sa mga fake news site, 'di ba? Kailangan tayo din mismo vigilant din tayo sa paghahanap natin ng mga tamang content for our kids. I really encourage everybody, create your own content. If ready na kayo, kung medyo confident na kayo, kung hindi pa kayo masyadong confident, okay lang to, yung kagaya ko hindi nakikita yung mukha. So, okay lang 'yon. As you go along, as you practice, kapag nagkaroon na kayo ng confidence, then venture now into like become number bender. Like my friend Dr. Esperanza, he wasn't really using sophisticated materials. He was just using his smartphone, his whiteboard and whiteboard marker, and then he started creating content for math. Pwede din tayong maging ganun. You just have to be very creative with the content that we really wanted to share. Ang importante again, yung yung salaysay natin may saysay. Yung content natin, there's relevance to it. Okay? Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. I really appreciate this 2 hours. I don't think it's enough for us to be together, but it's already eating too much of our time. I'm sure we have other things to do also. Um, I'm sure you have, um, we have other things to explore on. And I can't wait. I really can't wait for us to it's good also that we can again share the word. Don't keep it to ourselves. Whatever you learn today, share it. Okay? Again, thank you so much for being here today. Right. Thank you so much for being here today. I really hope that um you'd be able to share the word to everybody. Um be of huge help to all, and contextualize your learning, and eventually be content creators yourself. Right? Okay. Right. So thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. Yes, apply it to yourself, and always, again, always be very open. Um, this is not a usual thing for us. Bago to. So whatever you learn from your experience of remote learning, pick up from the pieces and eventually improve it, so that when times like this would come, you're really prepared for it. Okay? I am really enjoying this conversation. I super enjoy this conversation. I hope you learned a lot from this. I can't wait to get started with, hopefully in the long run we can have more of this, and let's do a lot of conversations more. With this, I say goodbye. I hope to see you next time. Bye, everybody.